My name is Clark, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus Christ. In the past, I've struggled with alcohol and drug addiction, and by the grace of God, I've been free from them since June of 2010. And I'm truly grateful. I know you'll find this hard to believe. I currently struggle a little bit with food addiction, not to mention nicotine codependency. We're still working on the work in progress. This is my testimony to the healing powers, forgiveness, and grace of our all-loving God, to whom every ounce of glory goes. I was born in 1958 to middle-class working parents in Michigan. We lived in the suburbs with my father in the automotive business and my mother working outside the home Wednesday through Sunday nights, singing in various nightclubs around the state. My younger sister and I were raised largely by various babysitters. We were not a church family, but we did believe in God. We did not have a clue what a personal relationship with Him was. I prayed to Him often when I wanted something. From my youth, I remember a few things. I know my mother was always proud of me. I remember being better than my younger sister. She was vastly overweight, not good in school, and we didn't get along. I relentlessly picked on her both privately and publicly. I had many friends, though in truth I was extremely uncomfortable with myself. The outward mask of confidence was not what really existed inside of me, and I did have low self-esteem. Growing up, there was always alcohol in the house, and by the time I was 11, I had been introduced to it. Dad always had a flask in his pocket on our annual hunting trips. We would share a swig. I think it was whiskey when the hunt was successful, or when it wasn't. You see, addicts don't really need a reason. My parents always let us do what we wanted relating to booze and cigarettes as long as we didn't hide it from them. So, of course, I did both, and I did them often. I became addicted. By 14, I was smoking daily and drinking when I could. By 15, I was introduced to pot. My venture into the restaurant business was actually influenced by the fact that my paper route could not support my marijuana habit. By 16, I was drinking and smoking daily, both cigarettes and pot. In high school, my friends and I smoked pot every morning before entering school. By 16, I was working in another restaurant. The staff often went out for drinks after work across the street. The bartender there mysteriously befriended me, and I was able to drink underage, in excess, very cheaply. I later learned he was in a relationship with my mother, who was still married to my father. I drove home drunk from that bar nightly, somehow avoiding wrecks and the police. Success came easily for me in the restaurant business, where I was good at it. Waiter, cook, supervisor, it didn't matter, I got it done. After graduating from high school, and graduation was in question due to my constant state of being under the influence, I attended a local community college and took a new job in a corporate restaurant close to the college. More studies, which I finally started to take seriously, and a new job with more money increased the ease with which I could obtain drinks and pot. My co-workers and I were often under the influence at work. We went out every night after work to drink more. Often my entire night's wages were gone by the time I got home because I bought rounds at the bar. I lived to party and I did it well. I purchased a brand new Mustang in the fall of 1976, Farrah Fawcett style with blue and white stripes. After graduating from high school, on December 19th of that year, I wrecked it on the way home after smoking pot. I got out of the car, I threw out my pot, my papers, my pipe, and my other paraphernalia all into the woods because I had concluded that I never knew what pot was going to do to me. So I'm just going to drink. I can handle alcohol, I know what it'll do to me. That plan worked for a lot of years, but it proved very, very wrong. My next chapter was a university that offered a bachelor's degree in food service. I excelled there, again, drinking excessively in this party atmosphere. My friends and I even loaded up in my party van one night and headed to Lake Michigan across the state because we wanted to see the sunrise. We realized 2 hours after we got there that the sunrise is in the east and we were in the west. Alongside the state. That is no lie. This should give you an understanding of our state of mind. On to college graduation. I interviewed with 2 hotel companies and TGI Fridays. The hotel jobs looked boring. Fridays, with its large bar, energetic, beautiful waitresses, and free shift drinks after work was a paid party I could not resist. In the next 7 years, I worked 13 different locations in different states. I worked hard and I partied harder. Many mornings I woke up at home. I didn't remember how I got there or what had happened the night before. I thought this was a great way of life, or a great way to live my life, and the lapses in memory a normal part of the drinking process. Partial sanity came to me when my first son was born. By then I was 30 years old, a homeowner and a husband, and working one of those conservative, boring jobs in the hotel. Over the next 5 years, 2 more children followed. I still drink every night, but only at home and mostly in moderation. In '95, we purchased a failing restaurant and bed and breakfast here in Pittsburgh. We poured everything we had into that business over the next 13 years. Although we were perceived successful, in reality, we were only a week from bankruptcy the entire time. This is not to say nothing good came of this venture. My children and I worked closely together in the business as they were growing up, and they learned the values of hard work and financial rewards that came with that. In the second year of operation, my stress level had reached a point when I could not function normally. I thought I was the first person that had ever gone through this, but no, my doctor explained, it's very common, and Xanax will fix it for you. Wow. Fix it for you just like it has hundreds of others right here in this town. Well, he was right. I added it to my daily regimen of alcohol, and soon I couldn't live without it. Over time, it became ineffective, but of course, that didn't stop me from taking it. In 2007, the major employer in town that compromised 80% of my revenues began to have financial problems. This caused added stress on me, my business, and my wife, who was employed by them. She and I used alcohol to cover up the reality of what we should have been facing head on. Of course, this created a whole new set of problems for both of us. I had been a functioning alcoholic for a while now. All that changed, but today I decided that a drink in the morning was a good idea. I was now working my business drunk. The major employer had filed for bankruptcy, and immediately that 80% of my revenues disappeared. So I had more time to drink. On several occasions, I drove my Harley to work and had to be carried home in a vehicle completely inebriated. One morning in September of 2009, my wife had seen enough. She had come to rescue me at work at 11 a.m. on a Sunday. I was too inebriated to complete my responsibilities. She locked me in the storeroom. 52 years old, she locked me in the storeroom and completed feeding the group of 12 that I had failed to do. Then she took me home in my truck. I rode home on the floorboard because I couldn't get on the seat, and when we arrived home, I fell out of the truck onto the garage floor. It took a cooler of ice water dumped on me to get me off the garage floor. Think about that. Ice water? Okay. That afternoon, an intervention occurred. 27 friends, all prominent business people in Pittsburgh, stopped by the house and wished me the best as my wife prepared to send me to rehab. I was touched. And I was happy, for the doctors told her, let him keep drinking until you bring him in tomorrow. Because if you stop the alcohol intake, he may have seizures and die. So I got to drink freely for the next 22 hours. I didn't have to hide. Detox was horrible. I've never felt so sick and out of control in my entire life. I couldn't walk. I had to crawl to the bathroom to be sick. I could hardly breathe. I was so sick. I had vivid hallucinations playing in my mind. I wanted to die. No matter what, if I survived this experience, I would never touch a drop of alcohol again. Gradually, I got better with the help of the nurses and the staff at rehab. AA meetings, study, small group sharing, all helped me to begin I could live a life without alcohol. After I graduated from rehab, I went to 90 AA meetings in 90 days, completed the outpatient rehab, and for the first time in my life, I was free from the intake of alcohol and drugs. However, the damage had been done, for my mind was still a fog, and normal human emotions like happiness, laughter, and passion escaped me. At around 100 days, I took another drink, and within days, I was right back where I started. I thought I was hiding my drinking and fooling everyone. However, I know today that was only fooling myself. September 2009, I totaled my truck, 7:40 in the morning, running into the back end of a semi that was coming towards me and running another person off the road. Had I passed out a split second earlier, it would have been a head-on collision with that semi, and I probably would not be here today. My BAC, which is blood alcohol content, was at a .37. .37 is 4.5 times the legal limit of .08. Cardiac arrest and death by alcohol poisoning typically occurs at a .4. I went from being unresponsive after the accident to alert and walking in 3 hours. By the grace of God, I didn't injure myself or anyone else, and I achieved death twice that morning. Back home later that morning, I had 2 choices. Homelessness, because she was going to throw me out, or 30-day rehab. Duh, I chose rehab. I spent the next 30 days waiting to get out so I could get back home and drink some more. I wasn't done yet. And that's exactly what I did. Of course, getting through the holiday was tough. My now unemployed wife had far too much time available to monitor my activities. So I had to work really hard. But I became quite good at it, or so I thought. The following February, she left me. She had obtained a job 7 miles from her parents' house in North Carolina. I was excited anyway, for she would still be able to provide insurance for my son and I. And since she wouldn't be home, the drink went out. So guess what? That's what I did. On one occasion, I remember her telling me, "If you drink one more time, I'm serving you with papers." I never even considered stopping. You see, nothing mattered to me at that point except my drinking. I was on the verge of losing everything I had worked for my whole life. Truthfully, I no longer wished to live. Every advertisement I saw for something, I would say to myself, I won't even be around when that becomes available. And we're talking for a TV show that was going to start in 2 weeks, and this is the way I was thinking. I had come to the point where I hated life and everything in it. Alcohol had robbed me of myself. I went to work as part of my mask, but I left as soon as I could. When I left, I went to the store, got a box of wine, and went back home. If you came in my restaurant at that point after 12:15 and wanted lunch, I was mad, because now you were coming into my drinking time. Now the good stuff. Monday after Mother's Day 2010, my son Christian came home at 10 p.m. to find me writhing in convulsions on the kitchen floor. He called 911. I was taken to the ER, where I was tranquilized, and leather restraints were still necessary after tranquilizing because I was that angry and that agitated that the drugs didn't have any effect on me. Because my situation was so critical, they were not sure they could save me there. I was transferred to Tyler, where I spent 10 days in a medically induced coma. Detox number 2 was much better, for I slept through every bit of it. When I awoke, a doctor was explaining to me they were going to do a biopsy on my kidneys, which had ceased functioning, to see if they had died. I was on dialysis. I didn't know where I was or why. During the 10 days in the coma, the decision was made by the wife to close the business until I recovered. As my head cleared and my physical body came back to life, I had several conversations with God about what had happened. You see, when you're on your back, there's only one way to look, and that's up. Why was I here? Why had He chosen to let me live? What now was to be my purpose in life? I reached some conclusions. My drinking days were over. I would no longer attend churches where wine was served as part of communion. The business would remain closed, or if not the case, it would surely kill me. I had hit rock bottom, and I was ready to make changes. Celebrate Recovery Step 1 states, we admitted we're powerless over our addictions, and compulsive behaviors in our lives had become unmanageable. I was there. Attending Emmanuel Baptist Church with my son was to be the key to my success. This proved to be a worthy decision. I was welcomed there with open, loving arms, and several people told me how much they had been praying for me. The warmth and love shown to me who at that time was a mere acquaintance, was very touching, heartwarming, and very much appreciated. Here was a group of people whom I made jokes about for so many years because they didn't drink. And they accepted me, a sick and broken child of God, with open arms. The people of Emmanuel played a decisive role in saving my life. The most amazing part of this story is this fact. When I left the hospital on June 1st of 2010, I was again free to abuse alcohol and drugs. I could have gone anywhere and got anything I wanted. But I discovered I had no desire or craving to do so. It had been removed completely by God. In addition, my mind and soul had been restored to clarity. God had done for me what I could not do for myself. My desire to drink had vanished. My mind was clear as a bell. What a miracle. I was determined not to mess up this chance that God had given me. I would be grateful, humble, and through prayer, I would attempt to determine His will for the rest of my life. In August of 2010, I attended Kyle's What We Believe class, explaining how simple salvation truly is. I remember telling him that I didn't really have a problem with any of his teachings. Confess it with your mouth, believe it in your heart that Jesus Christ is King. He died for my sins and He rose from the dead afterwards. And because I believed this, I knew I was saved. Previous baptisms and professions of faith were not what brought me to God's kingdom. For it's by His grace and not by my works that I have received salvation. Jesus plus nothing, as Kyle likes to remind me. Step 2 states, we came to believe that power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And principle 2 states, we earnestly believe God exists, that I matter to Him, and He has the power to help me recover. I became active in the church whenever I could, and in July 2012 actually became a member of Emmanuel. None of my problems went away after I sobered up. In the first 30 days I was out of the hospital. I lost my business, my income, my home, my storage unit, my daughter, my dog, and many personal possessions. And that is not an exaggeration. As promised, the divorce papers arrived. I had a large reason to drink, but it never crossed my mind. I diligently went about the tasks in front of me, working it one day at a time. Soon, my new church family welcomed me. I found a job with benefits. I got re-involved with AA. I fervently searched for my fellow man who was in need of assistance and tried to help. And I volunteered for every opportunity I could. Because my program taught me if you're busy helping others, there's no time for a personal pity party. My prayer life strengthened as did my relationship with God. But try as I may, I clear an answer for why He didn't allow me to live was still escaping me. Then one day, a friend in recovery, who I went to church with, called and invited me to become a part of a new ministry called Celebrate Recovery. He was excited about it, and I told him yes. He asked if I needed time to think about it. And I explained this was God's calling, which I've been waiting for, to quit asking for I was in. After being asked to leave a 6-year-old's birthday party because I had said a bad word, H-E-double toothpicks in case you're wondering, and being prayed over by a dear friend who asked God, this is at work, who asked God, help me stop using inappropriate language. For once, I figured out it was God talking again and I ought to listen this time. So I prayed about it and I asked God to take that away and He did. Then we get out to Saddleback for the Celebrate Recovery training and we're told that foul language has no place in small group sharing. These are groups that I was going to lead. And I immediately praised God and thanked Him for preparing me for that ahead of time. Later in September this past year, one night, during my step study, I made another breakthrough. While a success in the secular world, because I had 2+ years sober, almost 3 now, I began to examine many other areas of my life. I realized that my passion for God had been put to the side and replaced by a passion for women. I spent hours on dating sites chasing after relationships that left me unfulfilled when they were done. And a voice asked me Is this really why you think God has you here today? Is this what you think He wants you to do with your time? I told my guys no. And I told my group I'd go home and cancel the sites and I'd leave the matchmaking up to God. He has better wireless connections than I do. I re-energized my prayer life. I began an earnest studying and training for the upcoming recovery night meetings. I became more fulfilled on a daily basis as I learned to focus on God. During the men's conference last month, I publicly acknowledged my commitment to Christ. And on Sunday, I was writing this testimony. I sent it to a friend for critique. And she sent back one question: when will you say, stop me in my tracks? I kind of thought I was. I kind of knew I had been. Called Cobb. We talked about it. He said, Jay, you probably are, but you're the only one who really knows. Anyway, I got up and raised my hand and said, I want to be saved, and I was. And on Sunday, March 3rd, here, I was baptized in front of my precious church family. Step 3 states we made a decision to turn our lives and our will over to the care of God. Today, my life is busier than ever. God has blessed me with a wonderful relationship, another part-time job which is very fulfilling, a ministry that is making a difference in people's lives, both mine and others. I have more true friends today than I ever had, friends who would take a bullet for me. And I am a better friend. I'm a better friend, son, and father than I ever could have imagined. I truly believe that I'm living God's will, and that is the reason that it's all happening so easily. Of course, Satan still rears his ugly head. There's still a portion of my brain that wants me dead, constantly reminding the old ways that I could return to. When I look over the last 3.5 years at all the things learned about recovery, about life in general, I made the following realization. Some people naturally self-examine and naturally have a relationship with God who leads them. For the rest of us, the 12-step program is a true blessing because we do exactly that. We examine ourselves and we establish our relationship with our God. In Celebrate Recovery, I have spent intense time with God, with other human beings, and with myself. The result of this time spent is a peace that surpasses all understanding. The only thing anyone needs to benefit from this program is a willingness to admit they are powerless, and that a higher power could return to sanity, and then have the courage to turn their will and their lives and their will over to the care of God. We turn our lives over to God once. The decision to turn our will over to God is made every day. Again, every day. I've done all 3 of these steps without reservation, and my higher power, the one and only true healer, Jesus Christ, has fulfilled and then surpassed every expectation I've ever had for my life. The best part of all is the belief that I have that the best is yet to come. I wake up daily grateful for today and full of anticipation for tomorrow. A good friend of mine from the AA program, Lloyd Billups, used to say, the late Lloyd Billups used to say, life is good, life is sweet, life is worth living. Thank you for allowing me to share my testimony to the greatness of our God.